The day I graduated from high school should have been the happiest day of my life. Standing in the auditorium of West Ridge High in Boulder, Colorado, I felt a strange mix of pride and anxiety as I adjusted my blue graduation cap. My mom had driven up from Denver for the ceremony, and even my grandmother had flown in from Chicago. Everyone was there, except my father. "He'll be here, honey," Mom whispered, squeezing my hand as we waited in the hallway before the ceremony. "Traffic from Denver is probably bad." I nodded, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Dad had been increasingly absent over the past year, ever since he and Mom finalized their divorce. Their separation had been civil enough, though I never fully understood what had driven them apart after 18 years of marriage. Mom moved to a small apartment in Denver, while I stayed with Dad in our family home in Boulder to finish my senior year. "Rebecca Miller," Principal Dawson called my name, and I walked across the stage, accepting my diploma with shaking hands. I scanned the audience as I crossed the stage, hoping to see my father's familiar face in the crowd. He wasn't there. I forced a smile for the photographer and returned to my seat, clutching my diploma so hard the edges crumpled. After the ceremony, Mom found me in the crowd of blue gowns and mortarboards. "I'm so proud of you, Becca," she said, hugging me tightly. "Your father called. He said something came up at work, but he wants to see you for dinner tonight to celebrate." Disappointment settled over me like a heavy blanket, but I nodded. At 18, I was used to Dad's excuses. Later that evening, I sat across from him at Frasca, the fancy Italian restaurant downtown that he'd chosen for our celebration dinner. Dad looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. "I'm sorry I missed your graduation, Becca," he said, taking a long sip of his wine. "A client emergency." "It's fine," I lied, pushing pasta around my plate. "So I was thinking about NYU. The deposit is due next week, and—" "About college," Dad interrupted, setting down his glass carefully. "There's something we need to discuss." The serious tone in his voice made me look up. "What is it?" "The college fund," he said slowly. "There's been a change in circumstances." "What kind of change?" My voice sounded small. Dad cleared his throat. "Some investments didn't work out as planned. The money that was set aside for your education. It's not there anymore." The restaurant noise faded to a distant hum. "What do you mean, not there?" "You've been putting money away since I was born. Mom showed me the statements last year when we were applying for financial aid. There was almost $80,000. "I had to redirect those funds," he said, not meeting my eyes. "There were some business opportunities that required immediate capital. I intended to replace it before you needed it, but things haven't gone as planned." My fork clattered against my plate. "You spent my college fund on business deals? Without telling me? Without telling Mom?" "Rebecca, you don't understand how these things work. Sometimes you have to take risks too." "To what? To gamble away my future?" My voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. "NYU costs over $70,000 a year with room and board. The deposit is due next week. What am I supposed to do now?" He reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled away. "You can go to CU Boulder, live at home. I'll cover your tuition payments each semester." "That's not the point. This was my money. You were just supposed to be keeping it safe for me. Technically, it was in my name." His tone had shifted from apologetic to defensive. "Look, I'm sorry about NYU, but you'll thank me when these investments pay off. You'll have much more than $80,000. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "When? When exactly will these mystery investments pay off? Because I need to pay for college now." "Rebecca, sit down. You're making a scene." "No," I said, grabbing my purse. "I trusted you." I walked out of the restaurant into the warm June evening, tears streaming down my face. My phone buzzed with texts from Dad, but I ignored them as I walked the 15 blocks home. That night, curled up in my childhood bedroom, I called my mother. He did what? She exclaimed when I told her what happened. That money was in a trust for your education. He shouldn't have been able to touch it. Well, he did, I said, my voice hollow. And now I can't go to NYU. Mom was quiet for a moment. I have some savings, she finally said. Not enough for NYU, but maybe enough for your first year at CU Denver. You could live with me. I don't want to drain your savings, Mom. We'll figure it out, she promised. Together. After we hung up, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, anger and betrayal churning inside me. My father had always been the practical one, the financial planner who lectured me about saving birthday money and tracking my babysitting earnings in a spreadsheet. How could he have done this? Morning came with a new clarity. I knew two things. For certain, I wasn't going to NYU, and I wasn't staying in my father's house another day. I packed my essentials into my Honda Civic and drove to Denver, to my mother's tiny apartment with its pull-out couch that would be my bed for the foreseeable future. What do you want to do? Mom asked as we sat at her kitchen table that evening, takeout containers between us. I thought about all the other kids like me, whose college dreams might be derailed by circumstances beyond their control. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else, I said. And I want to find a way to go to college without his help. 3 years later, I was sitting in the financial aid office at the University of Colorado, Denver, where I was now a junior majoring in business administration with a focus on nonprofit management. Mrs. Patel, the financial aid director, reviewed my scholarship application for the upcoming academic year. Your grades are excellent, Rebecca, she said. And your community service hours are impressive. You're a strong candidate for the Henderson Memorial Scholarship. Thank you, I replied, trying to hide my anxiety. The Henderson Scholarship would cover my senior year tuition completely, which I desperately needed. The combination of my mother's savings, my 3 part-time jobs, and smaller scholarships had gotten me this far, but funds were running dangerously low. I have to ask, Mrs. Patel said, closing my file, what inspired you to start the second Chance Scholarship Fund? It's quite unusual for a student to be running their own scholarship program while still in college themselves. I smiled. The Second Chance Scholarship had become my passion project, born directly from my own experience. In the months after my father's betrayal, I had channeled my anger into something productive. I started small, a GoFundMe campaign shared among friends and family, explaining how my college fund had disappeared and asking for donations to help other students in similar situations. My own experience taught me how quickly educational plans can fall apart, I explained. During my first semester here, I met other students with similar stories. A parent who emptied a college account for gambling debts, a family emergency that drained savings, unexpected financial betrayals. I wanted to create something that could be a safety net. What I didn't tell Mrs. Patel was how the scholarship had also become my way of reclaiming power. Each time I awarded even a small amount to a student in need, I felt a piece of what my father had taken from me return. The Second Chance Scholarship had started with just $2,500 raised through that first crowdfunding campaign, enough to provide 5 $500 micro-scholarships to students with emergency financial needs. By my sophomore year, local news had picked up the story and donations increased. Now, in my junior year, we had distributed over $30,000 to 28 students. Well, it's remarkable, Mrs. Patel said. The committee will make their decision on the Henderson Scholarship by next month. In the meantime, is there anything else I can help you with? Actually, yes, I said, pulling out a folder from my backpack. I'm working on expanding Second Chance. We've been offered a matching grant from the Colorado Education Foundation, but they need more formal documentation of our structure and plans. Mrs. Patel smiled. I'd be happy to review your proposal and offer feedback. Later that afternoon, I hurried from the financial aid office to the coffee shop where I worked 20 hours a week. My manager, Ellie, greeted me as I tied on my apron. Hey, scholarship queen, how'd your meeting go? Good, I think, I said, starting to restock the pastry case. Mrs. Patel is going to help me with the CEF grant application. That's awesome, Ellie said. Oh, and that guy called again, the one from the Denver Business Journal who wants to interview you. I nodded, making a mental note to call him back. Media attention made me uncomfortable, but it was essential for fundraising. Every article brought new donations and occasionally larger sponsors. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out to see a text from my mother. He called again. Says he wants to talk to you. My stomach tightened. My father had been trying to reconnect for months now. After I moved out on graduation night, our relationship had deteriorated into occasional tense phone calls, then just birthday cards and Christmas messages. For the past year, he had been reaching out more frequently, claiming he wanted to make amends. I texted back, still not ready. The truth was, I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready. The betrayal still felt raw, especially as I worked multiple jobs and relied on scholarships to fund the education that should have been secure. That evening, after my shift ended, I met with Miguel and Aisha, two fellow students who helped me run Second Chance. We gathered at a table in the student center, laptops open. I've finished reviewing the applications for this semester, Aisha said, pushing her glasses up. We have 22 students who meet our criteria. How much can we award? I asked, looking at Miguel, who managed our finances. He grimaced. That's the problem. We only have enough for 12 scholarships at $1,000 each. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. We need that matching grant. What about your father? Miguel asked carefully. You've never approached him for a donation. And I never will, I said firmly. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father was now a successful investment manager, the business deals that had consumed my college fund apparently paying off in the end. According to my mother, he had a new house in Cherry Creek and a vacation, property in Vail. I understand, Aisha said quickly. But Rebecca, I've been thinking. Your story is what makes Second Chance powerful. Have you considered being more public about what happened? It might attract larger donors. I'd always been vague in interviews, saying only that personal experience had inspired the scholarship. Sharing the full story felt too vulnerable, too raw. I'll think about it, I promised. Later that night, I sat on the fold-out couch in my mother's apartment, still my bed after 3 years, and opened my laptop to work on the grant proposal. Mom came in from her late shift at the hospital, still in her nurse's scrubs. You're up late, she observed, setting down her bag. Grant deadline, I explained. How was work? The usual, she said, sitting beside me. You know, I ran into Patricia Williams today. Her daughter just got accepted to Stanford, full scholarship. I smiled. Jasmine Williams had been one of our first Second Chance recipients when her father lost his job during her senior year of high school. The $500 we gave her had covered application fees to 7 schools. That's amazing, I said. That's exactly why we do this. Mom was quiet for a moment. Your father called me today, too. I stiffened. What did he want? He says he's heard about your scholarship program. Apparently one of his clients mentioned reading about you in the paper. Great, I muttered. He sounded proud, Becca. I snorted. He doesn't get to be proud. He's the reason I had to start it in the first place. Mom sighed. I know, but people can change. Maybe it's time to at least hear what he has to say. I closed my laptop. I need to focus on this grant right now. Maybe after that I'll think about talking to him. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I was ready to face my father. Every scholarship I awarded felt like a small victory against what he had done. But the wound was still there, just beneath the surface. The Denver Business Journal interview changed everything. After 3 years of keeping my personal story vague, I finally decided to tell the truth. about graduation night, the dinner with my father, and how finding out my college fund had been emptied led me to create Second Chance. I wanted to turn my experience into something positive, I told the journalist, a thoughtful woman named Layla, who took careful notes as we sat in a quiet corner of the campus library. Every student we help feels like reclaiming a piece of what was taken from me. The article was published on a Tuesday. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from local TV stations, radio shows, and other newspapers. By Friday, Second Chance had received over $50,000 in new donations, more than we'd raised in the previous year. "This is incredible," Miguel said during our emergency meeting that evening, scrolling through the donation notifications. "We can fund all 22 applicants this semester, plus build a reserve for next year." Aisha was monitoring our social media accounts. "The story is resonating with people. We've had messages from students all over the country asking if we can expand beyond Colorado." I was still processing the sudden attention when my phone rang again. My mother's name flashed on the screen. "Have you seen it?" she asked when I answered. "Seen what?" "The donation," she said. "Check your email." I opened my laptop and logged into our scholarship account. At the top of the recent donations list was a name that made my heart stop. Robert Miller, my father. The amount, $80,000. "He donated the exact amount of my college fund," I whispered. "Plus interest," Mom replied. "He called me first to make sure it wouldn't upset you. He said he's been following your work for a while now." I sat in stunned silence, unsure how to feel. Part of me wanted to reject the money out of pride, but I knew what $80,000 could do for our scholarship recipients. "There's something else," Mom continued. "He'd like to meet with you. No pressure, just coffee." 3 days later, I found myself sitting across from my father at a small cafe near campus. He looked older than I remembered, gray now prominent in his dark hair. He was dressed casually, not in the business suits I associated with him. "Thank you for meeting me," he said after we'd ordered. "I've been trying to find the right way to approach you for a long time." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "I appreciate the donation." It was the least I could do. He looked down at his coffee. "I read the article. You've built something." "Remarkable, Rebecca." "It shouldn't have been necessary," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. He winced. "You're right. What I did was inexcusable. I betrayed your trust in the worst way possible." "Why?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for 3 years. Was it just about the money? Dad was quiet for a long moment. "Partly," he finally admitted. The divorce had left me financially strained, and I was desperate to maintain my lifestyle, my image. But it was more than that. I was lost. Your mother and I were separating. You were about to leave for college, and suddenly I felt like I was losing everything that defined me. "So you decided to take my future to secure yours?" He shook his head. "I convinced myself it was temporary, that the investments would pay off quickly and I'd replace the money before you even needed it. It was selfish and short-sighted, and by the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late." I stared out the window, watching students cross the campus plaza. "You know what hurts the most? Not the money. It's that you let me believe for 18 years that you were the one person I could always count on. And then you proved that wasn't true." "I know," he said quietly. "I've spent 3 years regretting what I did. Not just because I lost you, but because I failed as a father in the most fundamental way. I didn't protect you." We sat in silence for a while. I thought about all the students Second Chance had helped, the letters of gratitude we'd received, the stories of degrees completed, and careers launched because of small amounts of money provided at crucial moments. "I don't expect forgiveness," Dad continued, "but I want you to know how proud I am of what you've built. You took something broken and created something beautiful from it." "The donation," I said, meeting his eyes. Is it really no strings attached? Completely, he assured me. Use it however best serves your mission. I just want to help, even if it's from a distance. I nodded slowly. I need time. I can't just forget what happened. I understand, he said. I'm not going anywhere this time. As I walked back to campus after our meeting, I felt lighter somehow. Not healed, not yet, but as if something had shifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Aisha. Big news! The Colorado Education Foundation approved our grant. Full matching funds! I smiled, picking up my pace. We had work to do. 2 months later, I stood at a podium in the University Conference Center, addressing the first annual Second Chance Scholarship Gala. The room was filled with donors, university administrators, past scholarship recipients, and local business leaders. 3 years ago, I learned a painful lesson about how quickly educational dreams can be derailed by circumstances beyond our control. I began. What started as a personal setback has grown into a mission that has helped 47 students stay in school during financial crises. From the corner of my eye, I could see my mother in the front row, beaming with pride. And a few tables back, my father sat quietly, listening. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that Second Chance is expanding. Thanks to generous donations and matching grants, we will now be able to offer scholarships to students throughout Colorado, with plans to expand to neighboring states next year. Applause filled the room. I paused, taking in the moment. Someone wise once told me that true strength isn't about never falling down. It's about what you build when you get back up. Second Chance is what I built, and I'm grateful to everyone who has helped make it possible. After the speeches and dinner, my father approached me cautiously. That was inspiring, he said. You've accomplished so much. Thank you, I replied, for coming and for the donation. He nodded. I was thinking, my firm has connections with several foundations that might be interested in supporting your expansion plans. Would it be helpful if I made some introductions? I considered his offer. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but maybe it was a beginning. I'd like that, I said. Maybe we could discuss it over coffee next week. He smiled, relief visible in his eyes. I'd like that too. As I watched him walk away, I realized that the scholarship had given me something I hadn't expected. Not just a way to help others, but a path toward healing my own wounds. The college fund my father had taken was now helping dozens of students achieve their dreams, multiplied many times over through the power of community support. I had named it Second Chance, thinking of the students we would help, never realizing that it might eventually offer one to my relationship with my father as well. The future was unwritten, but for the first time in 3 years, I was curious to see what it might hold. That night, as I drove back to the apartment I now shared with 2 roommates, having finally moved out of my mother's fold-out couch, I thought about how far I'd come from that devastated 18-year-old girl walking home from a ruined graduation dinner. The path hadn't been what I expected, but it had led me somewhere meaningful. Sometimes I realized the deepest wounds can become the source of our greatest purpose, if we're brave enough to transform them.